All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for spending your Thursday night with us. My name's Sierra Calaman. I am one of the school counselors. Just a reminder, we do work in pairs. So starting in 10th grade, your student works with two counselors, both a traditional school counselor, you might have heard us refer to as like a SEL counselor, and a college and career counselor. So, represented on this call, you have a couple of us from the traditional school counselor role, myself, and I have the beginning of the alphabet, and Amy West, who has the middle of the alphabet. And Mr. Lemon couldn't join us tonight. Um, Really what we're talking about tonight is really the magic of sophomore year. Sophomore year is a really cool spot to be because there isn't yet that pressure, so to speak, of junior year and the intensity that brings when students start thinking about what the future looks like. It's really a year all about self-exploration, which is a really exciting time, to work with students as a school counselor. And one of the ways we've been doing that is through sophomore meetings. So we have met with a good majority of our 10th graders so far. We invite them to come in and have a conversation about their interests, their passions, their career exploration, and it's really an opportunity to get to know us and also for that to be more of an individualized conversation. So I just want to say before we begin, if you have a conversation with your student and they have not yet had that, I can't stress enough how important that is to have that conversation. And it also is well timed, I think, before course selection, so we can have a more detailed conversation about that process, within that conversation. So first, starting with career exploration, which again is part of the meaningful piece of 10th grade. When we talk about career exploration at the sophomore level, we want to start by lowering the temperature first. We do not expect
Maybe put it on hold because
we do not expect students early in high school to know exactly what career they want to pursue. And truly, there are adults, that still haven't figured things out. It's a lifelong process for a lot of folks. So our goal instead is exposure and exploration. So we want students engaging in activities, conversations, resources that help them learn more about themselves and just all the possibilities that are out there. In fact, it's really refreshing for me to have a conversation with a student that, comes in and has no idea, right, what they want to do. Sometimes it's harder when you have students come in and they're dead set on, I want to be an anesthesiologist, right? When they're so certain when they come in, at 15 years old. So this is not something students need to feel anxious or scared about. Career exploration is about curiosity. It's not commitment. So this is really the fun part. We know junior year is right around the corner, but rather than focus on that process, again, we want students to start just in getting to know themselves and the rest, like that's foundational and the rest just comes. So ultimately, we're just helping students take these small active steps towards understanding who they are. And we're going to walk you through the kinds of questions we encourage students to ask and the resources available that lend itself to that process. So ideally, a rewarding career is one that brings together a student's interests with skills and abilities. So that's the intersection we're really aiming for. So not a final answer, again, just a direction. So we encourage students to start by asking some very simple but powerful questions like, what am I interested in? What am I drawn to? Right? What do I actually enjoy doing when we separate all of the outcomes? From there, we ask them to think about how they're already exploring those interests. So that might be through clubs at school, activities in the community, volunteering, internships, job shadowing experiences. And if they're not doing those things, that's okay too. The next question becomes, well, what could I be doing to investigate this? And that might look like watching videos, using online career tools, which we'll get into in just a moment. Talking with trusted adults about their own careers. I often ask students when I'm meeting with them, what are your parents doing? What are your you see your relatives doing? Because that's really their first glimpse of what's possible, like what's out there for them, or even getting a part-time job. All of these experience helps students test ideas in really like low risk ways. And another key part is helping students reflect honestly on their skills. So asking them to consider, well, what am I good at right now? What skills do I have, right? Whether that's writing, math, problem solving, communication. They obviously are not going to be experts. Again, we're talking about high schoolers who are still growing and developing, but everyone has relative strengths that they can tap into. And we're very intentional about reminding students that if they're not sure, again, that's super normal. So, conversations with parents, teachers, counselors, other trusted adults can be incredibly helpful in identifying strengths that they may not see in themselves yet. We also encourage students to think about alignment. So, if I'm interested in engineering, is math a strength, right? Or something that I need to work in? If I'm thinking about law or advocacy, am I comfortable speaking in front of others, right? We have to be realistic and make sure those things they mesh. And importantly, this isn't about ruling careers out. It's about asking, what would I need to develop to move in this direction? So that leads to that final piece, which is growth. So are students taking appropriate courses? Are they putting in effort to build those skills if there is, a skill deficit that they need to build? Or are they doing engaging in classes or programs like DCTS, for example, is a great example that could help them strengthen areas they need for their future. Personal values, another lens we encourage students to use when thinking about careers is personal values. Skills and interest matter, but so does what motivates you and what you want your life to feel like. So some students are, driven by helping others or collaboration. I think we as counselors can certainly relate to that in terms of our profession. Others value creativity, leadership, or achievement. And we also want to say this very clearly. It's completely okay if compensation, stability, or financial security are important to you. Like wanting to make a good living is not a character flaw. In fact, I think most folks on this Zoom will tell you paying your bills and enjoying your life matters too. Not just, what you enjoy doing. So the goal here isn't to rank values or pick the right ones. It's simply to help students notice what matters most to them right now, knowing that those priorities can and they often change over time. So when students think about careers through the lens of values, it helps them picture not just a job title, but they can picture a life that they actually want to live. And that perspective is ultimately what leads to long-term satisfaction. So in other words, it's totally okay to want both a purpose and a paycheck. And next, I'm going to pass it off to Mrs. West, who can take some time to really share ways students can explore these interests using the resources we have here at the high school.
Thank you, Sierra. So I'm Amy West. I work with the middle of the alphabet for the class of 2028. So last names GR through N. And my counterpart on the college side is Sarah Pace. So I'm going to move into discussing some of the supports we have at Radnor in regards to career exploration and then shift into our course selection process, which is quickly upon us. So to start, the two resources that we have listed here that help with the career exploration process are Smart Futures and SCORE. So Smart Futures is an online platform that all Radnor students have access to, and they can easily log in using Clever. Within Smart Futures, there's a wide range of career inventories and assessments that students complete throughout their time as Radnor students. By the time they reach the end of 11th grade, they'll have completed at least 9 activities through Smart Futures in an effort to encourage students to think about who they are, what they're passionate about, and how to make connections between the two to make informed decisions about their post-secondary and career plans. 9 is the minimum that we need them to complete, but there are plenty more on there. So we encourage students, especially those that are in that, not quite sure where they're headed or what they want to do, to really spend some time. It's a great resource that they all have access to. And then SCORE is a newer resource to Radnor. This year was the first year that we used it from, the start of the school year. That takes the place of Naviance. So, of those of you that may have some older children that use Naviance, SCORE is now replacing that as the college and career tool. Sophomores will be onboarded each spring to SCORE, and that also offers career assessments that allow students to connect their strengths and interests with future career paths. It's also the tool that we use for the college planning process, much like Naviance was. So sophomores will become familiar with SCORE in the spring. Our college counselors will visit health classes to onboard students onto that platform. So as we think about possible careers and college majors, it's important to think about how the summer can be utilized in a meaningful way. Before I go on, I do want to say that we as counselors definitely recognize the importance of downtime in the summer. We see firsthand how incredibly hard students work during the school year and understand the need to rest and recharge. But at the same time, we also see the value of spending some of the summer exploring interests and passions that often are pushed to the side during the hustle and bustle of the school year. So I'll go over some examples of how students can spend time in their summer months to further understand who they are and what they're passionate about. So volunteering is obviously a great one. And we often think of hospitals, animal shelters, or charitable organizations as ways to give back. But we've had many students offer their help and time with people in the community that may be in need of a service. Things such as lawn mowing, coaching a team, yard pickup, babysitting. Just remember that volunteering does not have to necessarily be through an organized or structured setting for it to count. So I'd encourage students to find ways to give back that align with their interest. Internships, these are typically not the easiest to secure for high school students, and often they are arranged through a student and their family's network. But any type of job shadowing or internship experience can be extremely helpful in the career exploration process. And then employment, no job truly is too small. Any sort of consistent employment is certainly a positive thing. Not only teaches students employability skills, but also exposes students to the world of work and the various positions and roles around them. And then college programs, you may have come across some of these or gotten mailers or emails about that. And the colleges often run a slew of programming over the summer for high school students. These can range in length from a week to 4 to 6 weeks and also range greatly in price. While these opportunities are often worthwhile, college admissions offices recognize that these are often pay to play and they will not give you a leg up in the admissions process, which is a common question we receive. So please don't think of these as a must do. And then there's free online programs. So as I mentioned, the college programs often are costly. So there's the opportunity to take free online courses through platforms such as Coursera or MIT's OpenCourseWare. Again, this can be a great and accessible way for students to dive deeper into subjects of interest while they have some downtime. And then possibly the least exciting of all, preparing for standardized exams such as the SATs or ACTs. While this may not be the ideal way to spend some summer hours, it can help alleviate some of the stress and anxiety around the SATs or ACTs if some of the preparation is completed during the summer months. But as I mentioned, please spend time to rest and recharge over the summer months. This message here is not to pack your child's entire summer, but to think of ways to incorporate activities throughout that time that will help students better understand themselves, their interests and passions, and how that relates to their future goals. So next, I'm going to shift into course selection and tying it all together. So we are about to begin the process of working with students to finalize their course requests for next school year. We encourage students to give a good amount of thought to their elective options. While there isn't much flexibility in the core subject content, students are able to explore a wide variety of subjects and courses through the many electives offered at Radnor. It's also important to think about themes around career exploration activities. For instance, if many of the career clusters and career assessments results include careers that involve public speaking, well, then it makes sense to take advantage of our public speaking elective. Likewise, if many of the careers that are popping up in career assessments include a good amount of writing as part of the job, then we would recommend students take advantage of our English electives to expand on that skill. Some students may have an idea as to their college major or future career path, and if that's the case, we encourage that students are taking courses at Radnor that align with those. And if you or your child have specific questions about what electives may make the most sense, then please reach out to your child's counselor and we'll be happy to have that conversation. And last, please use your resources. Your counselors are happy to have these conversations with you and help you map out a solid high school plan. So then the timeline for course selection, like I said, that is starting up next week. And some of the dates are not definitive because of the snow and all the changes of the schedule, but those dates will certainly be communicated out to students and families. So the next step, or the first step, I should say, in course selection will happen in early February, and that is when teachers enter their core subject recommendations. So they've known your child now for about half the year. So they have a good handle on what will make sense for them as a junior. So English, science, social studies, math, and world language are the core subjects, and those teachers will go into the system and enter their recommendations for next year. Any AP course also requires a teacher recommendation, even if it's considered an elective. So courses like AP Psych, AP Econ, AP Gov, any of those ones in the sciences, they all need a teacher recommendation from that discipline. In mid-February, students then have the opportunity to enter their elective choices as well as their backup choices, and that has to be through their own student hack account. So a good step for them to take now, if they don't know their hack account, again, the parents won't have access to this, so it has to be through the students, is to stop by the main office and get that information so there's no holdups when they have those that week to enter their electives. And then these dates are set February 25th through March 7th. Us counselors go out to social studies classes and we meet with each student individually to review courses for next year. We'll look at their core subject recommendations along with their electives and then make sure it all makes sense big picture. End of March will be the deadline to adjust course requests for next year. I'm not exactly sure of that final date, but that will be communicated out once it's set for sure. So as we continue through course selection, it's important to think about graduation requirements. Most of our students fulfill our graduation requirements by naturally going through our curriculum, but a few things to take notes on is our elective requirements, which include a half credit of an elective within the arts, which could fall under art, music, theater, or family and consumer science. And then students also need to take a half credit within the business or technology department before they graduate. Us counselors we do keep tabs on that, so that doesn't fall through the cracks, but it is good for students to have an idea so that they don't end up in courses they don't necessarily want to take their senior year. Teacher recommendation and leveling. We strongly encourage students to follow their teacher's lead with recommendations for next year. Across the board, we do not often see positive results when students and parents decide to override. Our teachers really do have a good sense of the curriculum and leveling and generally are spot on when it comes to recommendations. And then electives. As I mentioned, Radnor offers a wide variety of electives. We recommend students look through the program of studies, which is available online, to understand what elective options are available to them. We also have an elective sheet, which has the full list of any class that they can take. The program of studies has course descriptions about each course that's offered. And then balance. This is a huge piece of the puzzle and frankly, the most important. Sierra will talk more in depth about or more detail about the importance of balance in the next portion of tonight's program. And then last, there are just a few unique opportunities available to students that we want to highlight. So one is the Delaware County Technical School, or DCTS, which is available to all students that are interested in pursuing technical education. DCTS offers 22 programs at 2 campuses in Aston and Fulcroft. If this is an option your child is interested in, please encourage them to talk to their counselor. They do accept applications on a rolling basis. However, priorities given to those students that apply by the end of February. Many of the programs do fill up pretty quickly. So if this is an interest, we recommend applying before the priority deadline. And then Medical Careers is a program only for seniors that's also run through DCTS. Students start their day at a local hospital from 7 to 9 a.m. and then return to Radnor to take courses. For the first half of the year, students spend their time in the classroom learning medical terminology, patient care skills, and hear from public speakers that work within the medical field. And then in the second half of the school year, students complete clinical rotations in just about every floor of the hospital alongside medical students, doctors. It's a great shadowing opportunity. And medical careers, students earn 2 honors weighted credits for their time in the program. Now I'm going to shift it back to Sierra to talk about the importance of balance.
And if you have, if you went to the parent program last year, this is something that we tried to talk about pretty regularly. You could say this is a drum we beat often because we've seen a thing or two, in our lens, within our lens at school. So these are reminders that we are constantly trying to stress to families just so they know what to look for, and also to students. So one of the biggest themes we focus on with sophomores is balance, because high school isn't just about building a transcript. It's also about building a person. These years, ninth through 12th grade, we're building citizens, right? We're building humans that we want to thrive outside of our building. And when we talk about balance, we're looking at these four areas working together. So personal piece, talking to your family and friends, sleeping, nutrition, movement, self-care, right? None of these are extras. They're the foundation. A student who's exhausted and burned out can't do their best thinking, no matter how strong their work ethic is. And then academics, of course, we want students to challenge themselves, but we also want those challenges to be manageable. Rigor is important. Constant overwhelm is not. Academics, I find in this conversation, is not something that students aren't focusing on, right? Oftentimes, achievement is the focus. Academics are the focus. It's these other pieces that we need to remind students to keep in the equation when we're talking about balance. Activities are another key piece. So athletic clubs, volunteering, jobs, summer plans, all of those things, they're learning responsibility, teamwork, time management. There are there are things students can learn about life, and how to navigate problems, how to navigate difficult communication that they're frankly not going to be able to replicate in the classroom. So that's really powerful for students to have those experiences. And finally, growth and life skills. This is that behind the scenes work. So, learning how you learn best, managing your time, regulating emotions, setting boundaries, solving your own problems, right? As you try to, we're trying to pass that baton, to of our students to take that ownership. And learning how to bounce back when things don't go perfectly, because they won't. That's absolute. So our goal is not perfection in every column. It's helping students find a healthy balance that allows them to grow, to stay well, and still enjoy being teenagers while preparing them for what comes next. I really love this visual. We talk a lot with students again about the difference between healthy stress and harmful stress. The word stress has a bad rap, but stress is a good thing. There is such a thing as healthy stress. So it helps us feel motivated and focused and growing, right? Zero stress sounds really nice. But it means we're not stretching ourselves at all. That's when we're on vacation, we're on a beach, right? We don't want to feel like that all the time. The curve shows there is a sweet spot. So enough challenge that promotes that learning and growth, but not so much that a student feels overwhelmed or shut down. So when that stress tips too far in the other direction, we see things like exhaustion, anxiety, irritability, or burnout. And at this point, performance actually goes down even if effort goes up. So the big thing to pinpoint there is you're putting in all of this effort, and the outcome is actually exactly what you don't want, right? So it's diminished returns, right, after a certain point. So what we tell students is this, that feeling challenged is not a red flag. Feeling constantly and overwhelmed and depleted is. And you have a great lens as parents to see this. And I'm sure you can hear this and sense this when, I imagine this time of year around midterms, you might have seen it a little bit more when students are in a place of overwhelm. And our goal is to help students recognize where they are in this curve, make adjustments if possible, and whether that means adding healthy challenge or more often than not, pulling back before stress becomes too harmful. So, again, balance isn't about avoiding stress altogether. It's finding the perfect amount of challenge that's optimum that allows students to grow and stay well. So that really connects to course selection. And that so I want to come back to course selection through that lens. So when we talk about balance, this is where families feel the most tension, right? Making smart academic choices that are both rigorous and realistic. So we encourage students to think in terms of rigor versus realism because rigor is important, but it only works if it's sustainable. So we ask students to run classes through a simple question, right? Can I handle this while having a life outside of school, right? Am I choosing this class because I'm genuinely interested in the material or because I feel pressure or because I think a college wants to see this, right? And will this schedule still allow me to sleep? Sleep's not a luxury item. Again, that is a non-negotiable. We also talk with students about being strategic. So sacrificing well-being in the name of academic perfection usually backfires. It leads to overcommitment. Overcommitment shows up pretty quickly as sleep deprivation, increased stress and anxiety. Again, we see this all too often when students have taken on a schedule that looks really impressive on paper, but looks exhausting in real life. So if you're seeing this as a parent, again, it's worth a second conversation. And I like this as an alternative because we talk about a lot of outcomes in terms of success, and I feel like so much of that students can internalize as being very achievement focused, right? And a lot of it's can connect to like a post-secondary desire or a grade or an award, right? Something like that, and we wanted to end this section by broadening how we define success in high school. And again, reminding everyone, right, what the goal is, and that's to graduate healthy adults that know how to navigate the real world. And grades and achievement matter. Of course, they matter. And we we know that's important, and we do not, we certainly, aren't minimizing that. But they're just not the whole picture, and they're not the best predictors of long-term success or well-being. Some of the healthiest goals students can work towards are skills they'll use after graduation, like time management and organization they'll use for their entire life. Resilience and coping, so how to navigate stress, right? Speaking up for themselves, seeing setbacks as information, not personal failure. That's incredibly protective. And I know you do a lot of that at home based on, helping students navigate those challenges, in real time. Relationships matter and building meaningful connections with teachers, mentors, peers. We encourage families to help students set goals based on growth rather than perfection, celebrating progress and effort and persistence, not just those final outcomes. And prioritizing balance, again, sleep, nutrition, movement, and boundaries around schoolwork and time for hobbies. It's not lowering the bar. Again, it's supporting sustainable success. And when parents reinforce these goals at home, students hear a powerful message that who they are becoming matters just as much as what they achieve. And before I pass it back to Amy, I just want to stress the importance of your role in parents because we understand that you're navigating a tough line where you want to give your students autonomy and the ability to make decisions independently. It's why we encourage students to really row their own boat, so to speak. And, if they want their schedule changed, at this point, we want students to be reaching out to their counselors rather than parents doing those things, right? Or, if they're having, something that they're trying to problem solve in a classroom or a teacher, right? You're encouraging as parents, use your resources. We love that. We want to promote that independence. And I think when it comes to course selection, you can feel like you can't ask questions about their choices because you want to protect that independence. And that's where it can get tricky when you do have concerns about students that are overextending or on the opposite side, perhaps not challenging themselves enough. And Mrs. West can highlight one of the resources we have to kind of help you as a family navigate that because we know those are challenging conversations.
Thank you. So to wrap up tonight, so one of the things we did want to talk about are the resources and support that's available to you and your child. Last year we did this program in March when we had already gone through the course selection process, and we decided to move it up because we had just come through having so many conversations with students that felt like they needed to add another AP, and they really maybe liked music or art but felt like they needed to take an honors class in another discipline to look a certain way for college applications. And for all of us that have been doing this work for a good amount of time, it felt so like discouraging and frustrating and sad. Like I felt sad for the students that that's what they felt that like they needed to do while they're only 15 and in high school. So we wanted to move this program up to kind of get the word out a little bit earlier of just how important finding that right balance is. Um, and we're very, happy to help navigate those conversations with students. Um, to really make sure they put themselves in a spot where they can be successful, they can stretch themselves, um, but they can also be happy, which is ultimately, the end goal for all of us. So, school counseling support, we're happy to have these conversations. We will continue to have these conversations all year long with students about finding that right balance, what to do, what not to do. Feel free to reach out to us, or if you'd rather, we can talk to you as a parent directly, or we can call your student in and have that conversation if that conversation may not be going so well at home. We're happy to get into the mix. And then Wellness Wednesdays. This is an initiative through our student assistance program that's been a ton of fun. We did it started about a year and a half ago, I believe, and it's continued with some different ideas that we're bringing monthly to the school. So it's available to the whole school. And we promote different ideas around student well-being. So we've done yoga, we've done smoothies and smooth jazz. The puppies are a huge hit thanks to Sierra. She brings in some foster puppies, so that's always one that students love. Hot cocoa and crafts. So just ways for students to think about wellness and different ways that they can do those activities. Last year, my favorite one was at the end of the school year, end of May, we partnered with our music program. We had some student-led bands going, and all we did was put out bubbles and gave out ice pops. And
Mhm.
it was like the happiest I've ever seen the students. They were just so appreciative and like little kids again and having a great time. So that's a great initiative that I think us as counselors really enjoy doing every month. And then next is some things to save the date, future events coming up. So in-person opportunities are listed here. We have a volunteer fair on May 25th. That is different community people in the community, different organizations that are looking for volunteers. So that's during lunch and learn. That's only for students. The Civil Service Fair is May 30th, put on by our college and career counselors, representatives from armed forces, township employees, and county services. Again, that's during lunch and learn and only for students as well. April 16th, our college and career counselors are putting on a college admissions panel at 6:30 in the auditorium. And then our big one at the end of the school year, again, through the college and career counselors, but we're super excited about this one, Jeffrey Singlingo and Dream School College Fair. He is a pretty big deal in the world of college admissions and has a really good view on it. So I would definitely encourage you to come to this one, May 21st in the auditorium. We all are very much looking forward to him coming to Radnor. And that is a free event, but there are tickets that you will need to register for, but more information will definitely be coming out about that. And then we also have some virtual options. So there's a whole slew of them. Again, these are put on by our college and career counselors, different workshops that align to post-secondary planning. So anything from college athletics, visual and performing arts, gap year, high priority occupations. So those dates are virtual, so students and parents are welcome to participate, and we will definitely send out communication about those as those dates get closer. College athletes is coming up next week, so keep that in mind. The college admissions case study, that's a Zoom session, February 29th at 6:30. Any, 10th grade parents can certainly attend that too. That's kind of gives you a behind the scenes look at how college admissions may read different applications and gives good conversation about what they're looking for within that process. And then our counselor chats, definitely, I know 8:45 can be a difficult time, but if you're available, please pop in. They're quick, just updates of as what's going on. They're on Zoom the second Tuesday of every month, and that will be a team of counselors, and then Mrs. Seymour, our ninth grade counselor, attends as well. So that's what we have. That is a QR code to our Instagram account. So please follow that. We try and put out some good stuff on there. If you have any questions that are good for the group, please feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. We're happy to answer any questions that we didn't address or anything confusing that we talked about. So please ask away if you do have any questions. All right, anyone? All right, Sierra or Rochelle, did I miss anything or about any upcoming programming or anything?
I don't think so. I think the only thing I would add is that um for the post-secondary programs that are out there with information, there's no requirement that a student be, for example, like a junior or a senior. Really, like we invite, like if you feel like your student will be overwhelmed by that and that's too much, of course, that's not an appropriate fit. However, there are students that are really, excited to get more information and eager for that. So if you're interested, again, that's why we're putting those out to you as well, in case, you wanna hear that information.
Yeah, and I will say, and I'm not just saying this because Rochelle's on the Zoom, but our college and career counselors do put out a ton of great programming. Um, they really keep track of different trends when it comes to college admissions. They're constantly changing what they're doing to address student needs. So all the programming that they put out is worthwhile. So if you're not sure if it might apply to your son or daughter, just pop on the Zoom or attend and see what it's all about. Because I can guarantee you'll get some good information. The college admissions process, unfortunately, feels like it changes year to year, and they are in it every year. So some really great resources and programming that they offer. All right, last call for questions. Okay. So someone asked, did you discuss any ideas for college visits or planning between sophomore and junior year? What's normal at Radnor? And that's a tough, when I did the college and career work, I would always say that I feel like every answer to every question is it depends. It depends where your son or daughter is at in the process. Um, if they're ready to start visiting schools and have those conversations, if it makes sense for your family to go out and visit all those colleges at that time. So, this summer again, it's downtime. It's can be an easy time to kind of schedule and maybe take a road trip or go look at some local colleges. I would say in the summer, the downfall is that, students aren't in session, so it's not always the true picture as to what the campus looks like day to day, but it's not a bad time. It's not a bad idea to do it between sophomore and junior year, but sometimes students just aren't ready for that. So,
Mhm.
again, I would say it just depends. Sarah, did you have anything to add on that one?
No, I agree. There are certainly students that are eager to get on a campus, right? And there's other students that that time would be better spent, again, investigating those interests and getting involved or getting a summer job, or engaging in, some type of summer internship if they're able to secure something. So again, it depends on the student. But we also want students to know that in terms of a kind of secret sauce about, the best time to start that process, um, there there is no, like, in terms of sophomore year, there, like, really that process, that investigating and that exploration piece is sophomore year, but those actual, like, tangible things that students are doing, that is not starting until well into their junior year where they're planning for that. So I don't want students to feel like that is really time sensitive, that as, right after they finish sophomore year, that you need to jump into that step. We have that guidance and that built into your experience.
And then another question, is it 3 or 4 years of social studies required? Radnor, for graduation, we require 3 years of social studies. Um, so two different things in the course selection documents. So I'd be interested to see that. If you don't mind sending that, maybe emailing it to me or Sierra, we can look at the discrepancy there. But yeah, it is 3 years of social studies, science, and math for graduation purposes, and 4 years of English.
There was a question about work permits. I believe that's done in our main office.
Mhm.
Hey guys, it's Rochelle. Sorry I can't turn my camera on, but I just want to add, if I may, I'm Rochelle Goff. I'm one of the college and career counselors at Radnor. I work with the end of the alphabet. So if JJ Lemon is your school counselor, you also will work with me for your child as your child's college and career counselor. The one thing I just wanted to add about the college visits, and I think that Amy and Sierra hit this. One thing is it's really important to jump into that when your student is ready. I think otherwise it can feel a little either overwhelming or not necessarily impactful. The other thing that we see a lot of is, use SCORE, the platform that Sierra and Amy mentioned, to get an idea of maybe what colleges might be good for your child to visit. Because sometimes, if you're visiting schools that might end up not being good fits for them, or a lot of times we have see families looking at schools that they know of based on word of mouth or just like in our familiar vernacular. um Sometimes that makes it more challenging down the road when we're in a more tangible phase of the college exploration application process. If you've only seen schools that are maybe like not going to end up being good fits for your child, but they fell in love with certain aspects of that school. So try to, whenever you're going to start that process, yes, I understand. I saw the comment about it doing, kind of low pressure. I see the benefit of potentially, visiting schools when it's not necessarily high pressure, but you want to make sure you're visiting the right schools. And if there's ways that we as counselors can help guide you toward maybe the most appropriate schools, or we don't have a crystal ball, but like schools that we know might be good considerations for your kids, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you on that part of the journey.
Thank you, Rochelle. Are there any other questions from the group?
Yeah, I have a question. I
Yeah.
was looking, hi, this is Padma. I was looking at the elective uh, template, I suppose, and I saw that there are prereqs and co-reqs, and sometimes there's some overlap. It wasn't clear as to what the student needed to be taking to be able to sign up for another class. I think I'm maybe you could help us out there, like something like a physics class. Sometimes math is a co-req, sometimes it's a prereq. Um, so,
Yeah,
and that came up in a few different places. So I thought I'd just ask my daughter, but you're here, so I thought I might as well ask you.
yeah, there are some prereqs and co-reqs, like the one you brought up, physics advanced. The co-req is algebra 2 advanced. Um, there's some with different electives. So, for instance, if they want to go on to any engineering courses or project lead the way courses beyond the intro level, then they need to take intro first before they could take like aerospace civil or principles of engineering. Couple other with like guitar one to guitar two, film one to film two. So there's some there, but a lot of those conversations come up when we meet with students individually and look through their courses and their electives and just make sure that they are taking the right courses and that they have the prereqs and the coreqs for their junior year.
And those are determined by those departments as well, and they're based on the requirements of the course and the either the skill set or the material that students would either need to have finished already or be currently working on to be successful in that class. That's especially relates to things like physics. Like we wouldn't want students in a physics course and then taking like algebra one at the same time because the expectation is that students have a higher level of math to be able to bring, to that instruction since there's a lot of math within physics, more of like algebra two. And that's an example of why that comes up.
Do some students take intro to engineering and biomed concurrently? Does that look unfocused? They certainly can, but when you already have your five cores and then we're adding two more elective courses that are honors, we're at seven there, so it only gives you that one free period. It could be manageable depending on the student, but again, that just it depends too. Um, no, I mean that's something that we've seen, that students, if they have that interest in engineering, but also the interest in the biomed, the forensics, then yeah, they certainly can explore both. One thing though is, they're sophomores, and if you have a student that's eager and has a whole list of classes that they want to take, it's always good to remind them that there is senior year left, because a
Yes.
lot of times they want to pad it all in junior year, um, and then they're just, as Sierra talked about, we see that burnout happen, which junior year is not a good time for that for a lot of different reasons. But it's always good to remember to spread those classes out over junior and senior year. Anything else?
And could you remind me, when does the timeline for the schedules, like when is the final schedule published, and when do kids learn what classes they're actually taking?
So that comes out right the same day as freshman fundamentals, which is generally right around August 15th, give or take.
Mhm.
Um, that's when schedules are posted on Hack, and then they do have that 2-week window before school starts to make changes. So things like I signed up for engineering, but I actually want to take computer science. As long as we can make it work in the schedule, there's seats available, we can make those changes at that time. Um, Things like I don't like my physics teacher. Can I change? Or I don't like the period and I'm in. Can I be with my friends? That's going to be a no, a pretty quick and a hard no. But if they, signed up to take two sciences and then are thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even like science, then yes, we would rather them have that conversation before school starts and we can get their schedule set in place prior to the school year. Once the school year starts, then there is that um, 15 school day where they have to stay in classes before we can make changes.
Okay. And what about summer work? Does that usually just work out one way or another? It's like the same assignment regardless of the level, or I figured I have some recollection of it being kind of agnostic and it's the assignments.
Like for English classes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they do post that because it is different. It could be different books that they're reading or different requirements. It really just depends on the course, but they do post summer work on the website. I'm not sure when that typically goes up right off the top of my head. I think I know at least I'm like referencing it towards the later end of the school year. But it's not necessarily like identical between levels. Like it could be completely different books depending on the class that students are in.
Then are those classes usually locked in before August? I would assume so. The kids must know before they're leaving for the summer.
Great question. So, the clarification, students will know what their recommendations are for their teachers, and they will know what courses they'll have in terms of their core classes when we have those conversations come mid-February. Really, the question mark for students of what courses they'll have, really, we're talking about electives. That is what they find out August 15th. So core classes, like a student, let's say a student was recommended for, like an honors English class, there wouldn't be a situation where we would say, oh, honors English didn't work, so we're going to put them in advanced.
What about like an honors versus a seminar?
So sometimes students have to make choices between, let's say, one that came up this year was AP Pre-Calculus and AP Computer Science. Students had to make a choice. AP Computer Science at the end of the day is an elective. So, you know, most students, removed computer science and are electing to take that at a later time. Like sometimes you'll see things like that, but the entire schedule is built around core classes. So that would be pretty glaring. For example, if a student needed a particular, level of English and a particular math course, and there was no possibility in the schedule. That's why they spend so much time building it. We can't accommodate all electives, right? There are always going to be students that are unhappy customers, right? In terms of not getting their first choices. But for core classes, the entire schedule is built, to ensure that students have all of their core requirements that were recommended by their teachers.
Yeah, and just to piggyback, any major conflicts are communicated by the counselors. We work on schedules throughout the summer. So as soon as we have access to the schedules, and if we see a student has a major conflict, like their world language and their math, which typically doesn't happen, but something like that where they might need to make a hard decision, that's not going to be a surprise mid-August. That will be communicated prior to schedules being released, and we'll have, communications to figure that out.
Great. And it sounds like the summer work, that might only be an issue with things like in English or in AP social studies or something. I haven't heard of it in other classes necessarily. So
Yeah, it's English for sure. There's summer reading. AP US history typically has some summer work. Um, AP Bio may, depending. I forget if they did this year. I know in the past some years they have. So, uh, you know, not it's definitely not every class by any means.
Mhm.
thank you.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. We look forward to continue working with your children until they graduate. If there's anything specific or anything we didn't hit on, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, I'm the middle of the alphabet, GR to N. Sarah's the beginning, and then JJ is at the end. So thank you. We hope you all enjoy the rest of your night.